Hi everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about the ketogenic diet, specifically the advantages and disadvantages of it. And presenting today is me, Sarah, and Haley.
Yes. So today we will be going over the history, why or why not to follow the ketogenic diet, health implications, the policy systems and environment, and our conclusions. So the ketogenic diet has a rich history that dates back to the 20th century when it was first used in exploring treatments for epilepsies in the 1920s. And Dr. Wilder, a Mayo Clinic physician, developed the ketogenic diet as a way to mimic the biochemical changes that are similar to fasting, which was at the time known to reduce seizures. With its success, it became an effective treatment for epilepsy, particularly in children who did not respond to other medications. The diet is high fat, low carb, and adequate protein. This induces ketosis, which is a metabolic state that uses ketones for energy instead of glucose. However, the ketogenic diet saw fluctuations in popularity due to anti-epileptic and anticonvulsant drugs replacing it as the primary treatment. In recent years, NBC TV's aired a Dateline true story episode about a 2-year-old boy named Charlie who followed the ketogenic diet and became seizure-free. This created a boost in publication about the ketogenic diet and its potential health benefits, and has been studied ever since. Today, the ketogenic diet has created an impact on the general population, making it a fad diet. Typical of a fad diet, there are media outlets reporting on it, celebrities and influencers promoting it, and many companies trying to make a profit by selling cookbooks, many food products, and more. But is the ketogenic diet really that beneficial, especially when not used for its intended purpose of epilepsy? So this is an overview of the standard American diet that averages 20% protein, 30% fat, and 50% carbohydrates, whereas the ketogenic diet averages 32% protein, 60% fat, and 8% carbohydrates, which you can see here visually on the pie chart. And this means that foods like meats, fishes, eggs, cheese, oils, nuts, and seeds are encouraged, and foods like breads, pastas, rice, and sugars are restricted. So why would someone follow the ketogenic diet? Well, it's not because it could be because they want to enhance the epilepsy treatment, especially if they're not responding well to medications. Many multitude of type 2 diabetes markers, improvements, reduction in weight, and improvements in blood lipid levels. And this picture gives an example of all the different ways that the ketogenic diet has been shown to be beneficial from strong evidence of topics discussed today, such as cardiovascular risk parameters, which would be those blood lipid values, diabetes, and weight reduction, although not discussed today, and there has been strong emerging evidence of cancers, polycystic ovarian syndrome, neurological disease, and acne. So the ketogenic diet has shown to be potential benefits in managing type 2 diabetes, demonstrating efficacy in reducing A1C levels and facilitating glycemic control. This is important because of the escalating prevalence of diabetes paralleling with the obesity epidemic. It is imperative to identify these effective strategies for prevention and management. In a randomized controlled trial, the implementation of a very low ketogenic diet coupled with lifestyle recommendations of sleep, exercise, and adherence strategies yielded notably superior results in terms of glycemic control when compared to typical low-fat diabetes programs. Notably, over half of the participants adhering to that ketogenic diet intervention achieved a reduction of A1C to below 6.5%, significant contrast to the absence of such outcomes in the low-fat counterpart. And these online interventions hold potential for a broader outreach because with observed favorable outcomes suggesting more efficient approach to the self-management, type 2 diabetes, and transportation time, finances, and flexibility. And furthermore, in a 12-month randomized trial conducted among overweight individuals with type 2 diabetes, comparing the effects of moderate to low carbohydrate diets, it reinforced the consistent benefits of the ketogenic diet in terms of reducing the A1C values to at the 6 and 12-month intervals to more than twice the proportion of participants who initially presented with 6.5% above A1C value. And this particular study was administered through specialized classes under the guidance of group leaders through topics of sleep, exercise, and mindful eating in tandem with the diet changes.
So it's important to not only look at the positives of the keto diet in relation to diabetes, but also like the negative effects or cons. So first, let's cover a few terms in regards to the keto diet. Ketones are the fats that your body burns when you run out of carbohydrates or that carb power when you're eating, carbohydrates throughout your diet. And then ketosis is the sweet spot that you're looking for when you're on the keto diet. It means that your body has run out of this glucose source it gets from carbohydrates and is instead burning ketones to create energy. Ketoacidosis is when things go too far and ketones build up too much, turning your blood acidic. And this was found from Nelms, which is the author of the Nutrition Care Process book. This is more common for people with type 1 diabetes when blood sugar levels are too high and insulin levels are inadequate, but it can also happen if you have type 2 diabetes. Symptoms include excessive thirst, urinating often, confusion, weakness, fatigue. And then a quote that I found from Dr. Gonzalez Campoyo says, diabetic ketoacidosis creates a medical emergency due to the rapid change in the body's acid base balance, and this rapid drop of the pH blood, which is called acidosis, can depress the nervous system and muscle functioning, causing a person to become unconscious due to vascular collapse. Diabetes-related ketoacidosis is a dangerous condition and is often why doctors hesitate to prescribe this specific diet for diabetes. The keto diet is a little more extreme in relation to diabetes, and when you're a diabetic, the key is consistency. You often hear that diabetics are prescribed with carbohydrate consistent diets or carb controlled diets. This is because we don't want diabetics reaching those high highs or low lows in their blood sugar levels and having to adapt that with their insulin. If their blood sugar levels drop too much, it's dangerous and it's known as hypoglycemia. So if an individual does choose to pursue this diet strategy to maintain their diabetes, they must be in close contact with their doctor to adjust their insulin and medications as needed. And if an individual has additional complications such as renal disease or cardiovascular disease or any type of eating disorder, just due to the increased protein and fat in the keto diet and the restrictive calculation-based nature, it's not appropriate for these conditions. Thus, while there's evidence that the keto diet can provide positive results in managing diabetes, there's more effective, consistent options that are easier to follow. And then a quote that I found from registered dietitian nutritionist Melissa Mateo stated, diabetes is a lifelong condition, so managing your diabetes needs to work within your lifestyle, and thus restrictive meal plans such as keto can be effective, but it's not always the right choice when it comes to sustainability. Then diving into what the research says, the first study that I found was a randomized crossover intervention trial conducted by Gardner and colleagues in 2022, and it compared the differences between two groups. Each had type 2 diabetes, and there was 20 participants in each group. One followed a keto diet and the other one followed a Mediterranean diet, and it lasted 12 weeks. The results were that the hemoglobin A1C values, which show if you're managing your blood sugar levels well, were not statistically different between the two diets after the 12 weeks. But it is important that they both did improve from baseline fairly equally. So both diets were effective. It's just they were both as effective. The other study that I pulled was from Lee and colleagues in 2022, and this showed that other diets are more effective in managing type 2 diabetes, such as Mediterranean or carbohydrate controlled. It took two randomized control groups, each of 30 people, and gave one keto diet and one a carbohydrate controlled diet, also for 12 weeks. So it is important to note that each of these studies weren't super long. Just keep that in mind. And then both groups after intervention experienced decrease in their BMI, waist circumference, triglyceride levels, cholesterol, LDL, and HDL levels. But then it's important to note that long-term adherence to the keto diet was poor. And so the researchers kind of discussed this a lot at the end of the article. So I attached a table that kind of shows this better. So if you look here, the number of people who cannot stick to it in the ketogenic group was about 20%, and then in the diabetic controlled, like carbohydrate controlled group was only 3%. In the second section about people willing to stick to it short term, this was higher in the keto diet and lower in the carbohydrate controlled, but then that last line is the really important one that we're looking at, is willing to stick to it long term. Like, since we want people to be prescribed with something that's going to be lifelong, we want them to stick to it. So this is where the numbers flip, and the keto diet went to 16%, and then the carbohydrate control jumped up to 80%. So in conclusion, the keto diet can be risky for diabetics due to its restrictive nature, and there are other diets such as Mediterranean and carbohydrate controlled that in research have shown to be just as effective and more sustainable long term.
So when shifting to weight loss, the ketogenic diet has demonstrated effectiveness in facilitating weight reduction, particularly in the initial 3 to 6 months, attributed to the metabolic states of ketosis and other factors. So in a randomized controlled trial, the participants adhering to the ketogenic diet intervention exhibited more substantial reductions in body weight when compared to those in the control group. So the ketogenic participants achieved a weight loss of at least 5% of their total body fat at both the 16 and 32% mark. And additionally, a review focusing on the therapeutic applications of the ketogenic diet emphasized the multifaceted mechanisms contributing to weight loss. So this includes the combined effects of the reduced caloric intake that are typical of a diet, heightened satiety levels due to the increased protein consumption, and the metabolic advantages associated with the ketogenic state. So this is highlighted by the higher metabolic cost of the ketogenic diet due to the energy intensive process of gluconeogenesis, which is the production of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources facilitated in the liver. It is less metabolically demanding of a diet regimen. So it was found that in the 12-month randomized trial comparing moderate to low carb adults with diabetes or prediabetes, it was found that the low carbohydrate group found more weight loss and more reductions in their BMI, averaging a loss of 8.3% body weight when compared to the moderate carbohydrate group that only did 3.8%. So these are promising values to show the relevance of how impactful a ketogenic diet is on weight loss.
So Haley just explained a few ways that keto can help with weight loss, but there's also other factors to consider when looking at the keto diet if it's truly effective long-term. These factors are, again, sustainability and adherence, which we kind of talked about earlier, and then that the diet's restrictive and a little complicated and also possibly costly. So obviously the keto diet is a diet, and if you follow it appropriately, you will lose weight. The points I'm going to bring up involve the challenge of adhering to it, or like the other word for this is sustainability of a diet. While the keto diet proves to be effective in the initial weight loss of a couple pounds, many people find it difficult to stick to due to its restrictive nature. The keto diet is known to be low carb, which then causes the body to use fat stores as the main form of energy instead of glucose. This is known as ketosis, as we went over previously. And long-term ketosis can lead to negative symptoms such as nausea, muscle ache, and fatigue. Also, avoiding foods such as like pasta and rice and corn and bread can just be like a drastic change for individuals in general, cutting out or like restricting this food group. Since the ketogenic diet is low carb, a majority of individuals' calories come from fat. This means that the diet is high in fat, and if individuals choose unhealthy fats such as like trans or saturated fat, this is also linked to heart disease, which we will cover a little later in the presentation. Another factor that individuals on keto should be aware of is that they can be nutrient deficient due to the restricted food group consumptions. Another negative side effect that I want to bring up is you could be like constipated due to your low fiber intake of like whole grains and some fruits and vegetables. And then additionally, individuals find it difficult or complicated to incorporate this diet into their life. It may be challenging to find foods that fit into keto based on like where they live, their accessibility, how much it costs. A lot of times food labeled ketogenic, they mark up the price on it, such as like protein supplements, etc. Additionally, individuals limit themselves socially when they're going out, trying to find something that fits the keto diet. And a lot of social events, involve food or surrounded by food. And then one fact that I found interesting while researching this topic is that there are other effective ways to mimic ketosis, such as your sleep cycles. So not eating for several hours before you go to bed and then sleeping for 8 hours puts your body into ketosis. So yet again, they're just less restrictive ways to mimic the same results that keto delivers. So then jumping into the research, I pulled 2 studies on this. The first one was just to kind of determine if there's a yo-yo effect with like dieting, of like jumping on it and jumping off and like gaining weight and losing weight. And so this review highlighted a study that determined that combining brief periods of the keto diet with Mediterranean diet led to successful weight loss long term. So this kind of shows that maybe if someone wanted to use keto for weight loss, if they pair it with another diet, it might be more effective to stick to. The next article was a meta-analysis, and the researchers investigated if weight loss using low carbohydrate diets was more effective long-term than other diets. So they looked at 25 trials and they compared these controls with low carbohydrate diets, which keto would fit into that. And they were associated with significant reductions in body weight loss in the 3 to 4 month range and the 6 to 8 month range. But then once you jump to 10 to 14 months or 18 to 30 months, this significant was like there was no longer like a difference. So basically the BMI reduction followed the same patterns, and this meta-analysis showed that non-carbohydrate restrictive diets and low carbohydrate diets had the same effectiveness for weight loss when looking at the long-term results. In conclusion, the ideal diet is defined as being safe, healthy, nutritionally adequate, culturally acceptable, and economically affordable. And it should ensure like long-term compliance and effectiveness. And so we just need to ask ourselves if the keto diet meets these requirements.
So for blood lipids, the ketogenic diet demonstrated favorable effects on blood lipid values, encompassing key markers such as total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. And those are all markers for cardiovascular health. So a meta-analysis of 14 randomized controlled trials described the beneficial influence of the ketogenic diet on lipid profiles, specifically in individuals with diabetes. While the specific magnitude of these improvements were not exactly quantified, analysis highlighted the notable enhancements, particularly in lower triglycerides levels and elevated HDL cholesterol levels. Furthermore, in a randomized crossover trial comparing the ketogenic diet to the Mediterranean diet, there were observed improvements in triglyceride levels, demonstrating a significant reduction of approximately 16%. And while there was an increase in LDL, the study emphasized the notable shift in the particle size distribution, indicating the reduction of cardiovascular risk. Also, it yielded an 11% increase in HDL cholesterol levels, which is the good. And those are all different ways that the blood lipids impacted the ketogenic diet. So in this table, when comparing the ketogenic diet to participants who are overweight or obese with type 2 diabetes, it was found that there were significant reductions in key parameters, including the body weight, BMI, waist circumference, triglycerides, cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and A1C. And there was also reductions in body mass, blood lipid values, blood glucose. And this just shows the diet's impactful effects on many factors associated with obesity, cardiovascular health, and type 2 diabetes as a whole. And you guys can look at those values further.
Lastly, we will investigate the potential negative side effects to one's cardiovascular system when following the keto diet. The first point I wanted to highlight is that a study published by the American College of Cardiology found that individuals who followed a keto diet were found to have higher LDL levels. The second point is that there's evidence on both sides whether keto diet improves or declines cardiovascular health. When I was doing my research, it all kind of boiled down to the quality of fats that individuals are choosing. Like since they're pulling out a lot of carbohydrates in their diet, like what kind of fats are they implementing that with? So if they're choosing saturated fats or trans fats, such as butter, red meat, fried foods, cheese, basically anything that comes from animal products, then your LDL, which is your bad cholesterol, is going to raise, which puts you at higher risk for increased different like cardiovascular diseases such as arteriosclerosis, heart attacks, hypertension, atrial fibrillation, coronary artery disease, and ultimately heart failure. However, if you are choosing polyunsaturated or monounsaturated fats, which are deemed like healthy fats, which include fish, eggs, nuts, seeds, etc., basically they're derived from plant sources or lean meats, then your risk for cardiovascular complicated disease decreases. So then also looking at the research for this, we already know that increased intake of unhealthy fats leads to increased risk for cardiovascular disease and vice versa. So instead, I kind of looked more for research on high and low carb intakes and your risk for cardiovascular disease, just because I don't know, I found that topic like a little more interesting and less covered. So the study that I pulled followed 15,000 participants ages 45 to 64 years old for 25 years. So this was a large population for a long time. And they were sampled from 4 US locations with diverse backgrounds to help generalize these findings to multiple ethnic groups. And the participants were enrolled in the arteriosclerosis risk in communities, which is known as the ARIC study along with this one. And then information was pulled from that study and combined with the information that we got from this study to make the implications. So they were asked to fill out a diet questionnaire that enabled researchers to categorize them into low, medium, and high carbohydrate intake groups based on the percentage that they were, daily consuming. And then after the 25 years, a little over 6,000 of the participants died, and they investigated like what these deaths were from. And the results showed a U-shaped association, as you can see on the table there, that the percentage of people, or the people that consumed a 50 to 55% energy intake from their carbohydrates was in the middle there in the U shape. And they had the lowest risk for mortality caused by cardiovascular health complications. And just for reference, the Dietary Guidelines of America recommends carbohydrate intake between 45 to 65% of your total daily calories. So this is just a little bit outside of that range, but again, right in the middle there. And the results also displayed that both low carbohydrate consumption and high carbohydrate consumption, so either side of those graphs, was linked with higher mortality risk due to like a cardiovascular incident. And an additional note is that the study highlighted that substituting the lack of carbs, again, like we said earlier, with animal proteins, increased one's mortality risk. That was kind of like a sub thing that they investigated in this study, and that putting it in with plant fats like instead decreased your risk for cardiovascular disease. So again, the benefits of this study include the large sample size and the extended follow-up period for 25 years. And then additionally, the researchers compared the results to 8 cohorts that studied a hypothesis that was similar to this, and they also found similar results. So I thought that was cool. So next we're going to transition into policies, systems, and environment.
Perfect. So these are going to be talking about ketogenic diet just as a whole, rather than just like pros and cons of each. So the regulatory landscape concerning the ketogenic diet is characterized by a notable absence of direct policies. So in the realm of marketing, there's an absence of specific regulations by the FDA pertaining to the use of buzzwords like ketogenic or keto diets. And this highlights the lack of the standardized guidelines governing these terms within the food and possible supplement industries. And similarly, there's also unregulated usage of substitute terminologies such as net carbs or low carbs. And while also commonly looked for ketogenic diet, there is an FDA regulation for labeling of high fat content in food products, mandating disclosure of fat content exceeding that 20% of the recommended daily intake. So in terms of media, each platform has its own policies and ways of enforcing misinformation. However, there could be more strict media filter posts in terms of that would limit the spread of false nutrition information. And this could be done through pre-posting reviews, processing, reporting, and banning certain words or phrases. And that could be labeled as fact-checked misinformation or just taken down completely. And there could also be the development of new policies, such as implementation of mandatory training programs for educators, such as practitioners, focusing on fad diet education. So for systems, the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics doesn't seem to really have a strong opinion on the diet either. It highlights how the diet works, what restricting carbs kind of means, and discusses some long and short-term health effects, but it doesn't really make a stance in their support or not. So this makes nutrition professionals research their own ideas or take a continuing education. So the American Nutrition Association does provide a comprehensive and specialized continuing education for nutrition professionals, both offering foundational and advanced training modules. And this education focuses on the historical overview of ketone metabolism, creating a ketogenic plan, and the ketogenic diet specific to insulin, cancers, and neurological disorders. And these programs can be kind of costly, equaling $295 to $695. But also, we found that the American Academy of Pediatrics issued a cautionary report regarding the use of low carbohydrate diets for children who are or at risk of developing diabetes. And they highlighted really adverse health effects like growth deceleration, deficiencies, poor bone health, and disordered eating patterns. And they just recommended the standard diet of appropriate protein, fat, and carbohydrate consumption with the encouragement of physical activity. So for the environmental scape, there has been significant attention for various media platforms with consistent media posted on the topic, content creators actively engaging in the topic, and notably, like you can see here, celebrities that publicly shared their experiences and successes with the ketogenic diet. And there's also been many interest articles that have been posted in the news or other media outright trying to claim their stake in the topic. Their interest has also been translated into dedicated cookbooks tailored to the ketogenic lifestyle, which you could buy online or on Amazon. And getting down to the different platforms, so Instagram on the left shows a multitude of different hashtags targeted towards the ketogenic diet, having millions of posts, and on the right is the ketogenic search options on TikTok, showing all the different topics, tips, and personal knowledge and widespread dissemination of our topic.
So in conclusion, we discussed the keto diet as it relates to diabetes, weight loss, and blood lipids, and determined that as future dietitians, we would be apprehensive to recommend this diet for the majority of cases. We found that the keto diet, while seen as beneficial for some ailments like childhood epilepsy, overall is not sustainable and oftentimes was found to only have temporary benefits when compared to the normal effective management of diabetes, weight loss, and blood lipid values. Furthermore, while there are a lot of environmental factors related to the keto diet due to the vast social media presence, as far as policy and systems go, we found limited regulatory standards on these. Thus, as future RDs, we are called to educate ourselves and the public on fad diets such as keto. And examples of these educational avenues could include food labels, classes, and material just presented to the public through websites or in person. So thank you guys again for your time and consideration on this topic. If you have any questions, here's Haley and I's email, and then also here are the sources for the information that we presented today. Thank you.
Thank you.